The story begins in 1964 in an antique store located around the city. A young couple, Ed Warren and Lorraine Warren, recognized for facing supernatural phenomena, investigate an enigmatic case involving Lucy, daughter of the owner of the establishment. Lucy tells that her father died recently in a tragic way. He was found hanged. Since the mirror arrived at the store, strange events began to manifest. After the father's death, Lucy decided to keep the mirror in the warehouse, hoping that the disturbances would cease. However, the inexplicable events continued. Moved by curiosity, Ed and Lorraine decide to examine the mirror personally. Upon entering the warehouse, Ed shows concern, mainly because Lorraine is in the final months of pregnancy. But she reassures him, stating that she will be fine. When her hand touches the frame of the mirror, a sharp pain arises in her womb, a sign that the labor has begun. Afflicted, Ed quickly takes her to the hospital not far away and stays by her side while the couple's first child is born. At the hospital, the doctors ask what happened, and it is noteworthy that the woman is entering labor before time. In the delivery room, the tension increases when the lights suddenly go out. Even in pain, Lorraine sees the evil being chasing her and is present there to torment her at this moment of giving birth. After a prolonged struggle, Lorraine finally gives birth to a girl. However, the joy lasts short. The baby does not make any sound. The doctors do everything they can, but end up declaring that the child is dead. Dominated by pain, Lorraine holds her lifeless daughter and cries desperately, asking for an opportunity for her to live. Miraculously, the baby begins to cry suddenly and begins to breathe normally. The girl is named Judy. Time goes by quickly. Judy grows up and becomes a kind young woman, inheriting her mother's gift of perceiving spirits. Lorraine teaches her to control this ability so that she is not constantly disturbed. 22 years later, in 1986, the story goes back to the Smurl family in Pennsylvania. Jack and Janet live with 4 daughters, Heather, Dom, and twins Karen and Shannon, in addition to Jack's parents. On that day, everyone is busy preparing for the celebration of Heather's baptism. The house is filled with laughter and joy as Jack records each moment with his portable camcorder. He comments that the daughter is in the footage and mentions that she is beautiful. At home, hours later, when Heather opens her grandparents' gift, she is surprised to find an old mirror purchased at an auction. No one realizes that it is the same mirror that brought tragedy to Lucy's family decades before. When Heather prepares to put out the candles of the celebration, they suddenly go out by themselves. They ask what happened and wonder who put out the candle. Everyone was confused because no one had blown them out. Seconds later, the ceiling falls apart and hits Heather on the head. The scene changes to show Eddie's family having dinner at a restaurant. Judy, now an adult, plans a small party to celebrate the retirement of the parents of the activities in the spiritual world. Eddie seems weaker as his heart problem worsened after years of facing dark forces. The joy of the night is interrupted when Lorraine feels a sudden shiver around. Judy also shuts up when she realizes that something invisible is approaching. She tries to calm down by praying, but Lorraine paralyzes when she sees a shadow of pale hands touching her daughter's shoulder. In an instant, the figure disappears. To not worry Eddie, Lorraine and Judy decide to keep the incident a secret, avoiding increasing their stress, aware of their fragile health. Meanwhile, in a suburban neighborhood of Pennsylvania, Janet organizes piles of clothes in the basement. Suddenly, she hears a soft voice calling her name. A dark silhouette appears in the dark, but when the light comes on, there is no one there. Later, Janet prepares dinner while talking on the phone with a long wire. Suddenly, the cable of the device seems to be pulled by something invisible. Irritated, Janet imagines that the children are playing a game. However, when she sees them in the room, she gets confused. She asks who could have pulled the wire. Meanwhile, the twin daughters happily play with dolls in the room. Shannon realizes that one of them has disappeared. She looks around, but finds a scary female figure in its place. That night, Heather, unable to bear the disturbing presence of the old mirror for longer, convinces Dom to help her get rid of it. She feels as if something behind the glass is constantly watching her. She expresses horror. The next morning, the mirror is picked up by the garbage men and placed in a crushing truck. Moments later, something more scary happens. When the mirror shatters into countless pieces, Dom screams in agony and begins to vomit fragments of glass. Everyone around panics without being able to understand what is happening. After the terrible incident involving Dom, the narrative changes for Eddie, who undergoes a routine medical examination. The doctor informs that his heart is more fragilized due to years of stress and confrontations with supernatural forces. He is warned that another heart attack may be fatal. Eddie understands that his body no longer has the same resistance as before. That night, he returns home and finds Lorraine preparing a little surprise to celebrate his birthday. He feels grateful for still sharing that moment with the woman he loves. Shortly after, Judy arrives, accompanied by her boyfriend, Tony. She introduces him to the parents, and Father Gordon, an old friend of the family, also appears to offer blessings and congratulations. During the welcoming conversation, Tony moves away for a few moments, while Judy goes up to the room full of childhood memories. As she remembers the past, Annabelle's spirit suddenly arises to torment her again. Scared, Judy immediately begins to recite the prayers taught by her mother. Moments later, Tony rushes in to hear the noise, but Judy, not to worry him, assures him that everything is fine. Then Lorraine calls them to the garage, where Eddie waits, and provokes Tony to a friendly game of ping-pong, saying that he will need to move a little. When Judy is absent for a few moments, Tony takes the opportunity to talk in particular with her parents. He removes a small ring from his pocket and sincerely declares his intention to marry Judy, hoping to receive their approval. In the midst of the embarrassing but sincere moment, Lorraine smiles and advises Tony to be a good husband. Shortly after, Judy returns and realizes that Tony intended to ask her to marry him, asking if it was for her, confirming that yes, mentioning the car, and agreeing. Meanwhile, Jack's house atmosphere becomes heavier and heavier. Still shaken by the strange episode he experienced, Dawn begs her father to move immediately. She feels that the house is no longer safe, and the evident fear on her face shows that she does not want to stay there. However, Jack tries to reassure her. He has already contacted a priest to perform an exorcism in the residence. The religious will arrive the following week, and Jack believes that everything will be fine. Her calm posture, however, only increases Dawn's frustration. For her, waiting a whole week is unbearable, especially after everything that happened in that place. She wonders if they will really let them live in a haunted house, and claims that the entity wants to kill them. Jack replies that this will not happen. That night, while everyone is resting, Jack, about to go to bed, is scared when the bedroom door slowly opens by itself. This time, he himself faces a terrifying paranormal manifestation that leaves him paralyzed with fear. At the same time, Heather, unable to sleep, decides to watch an old family party recording.
When it reproduces the moment when she turned off the candles, something makes her hair shiver. In the video, a dark figure appears clearly next to her, and it is this presence that really turns off the candle. Suddenly, a tall man appears in the room, advancing towards Heather. She screams, terrified, waking up the whole house. Janet runs to the room and finds her daughter shaking on the floor, pale with terror. After that scary night, Janet finally loses her patience. The promised priest will not be able to come before the following week, as he still needs permission from the church. For Janet, waiting so long means putting the family in danger. Desperate, she decides to look for a local means of communication. She reports the astonishment her family faces, hoping that the disclosure will draw the church's attention and make the case a priority. It does not take long for the news of the cursed house to spread quickly. In an interview, Janet claims that her family is not looking for notoriety. They just need urgent help, and what they are experiencing is not an invention. Elsewhere, Judy dedicates herself to the preparations for the wedding day. She goes to a boutique with Lorraine to try on the bride's dress. Everything seems normal at first, until the stylist, Brenda, moves away to answer a phone call. As soon as Brenda leaves, Judy feels a cold and strange presence around her. Suddenly, she feels weak, while a terrifying, spectral figure begins to torment her. A voice asks Brenda if everything is okay down there. At the moment when she begins to regain peace after the disappearance of the specter, Judy is terrified again when her reflection in the mirror suddenly advances against her. Fortunately, Lorraine, hearing the noise, runs inside and finds Judy trembling with fear. Back at Jack's house, Father Gordon finally arrives after the family's case gains prominence in the media. Janet and Jack welcome him and report everything that happened. In reality, Father Gordon's visit was not officially authorized by the church, which means that any measure adopted there is out of ecclesiastical jurisdiction. Still, he wishes to help the family in any way he can. After walking through all the rooms, Gordon feels a deeply evil presence remaining in the house. A voice mentions spirit and questions what happened downstairs. Realizing the darkness installed there, he decides to return immediately to the church to request formal permission to perform an exorcism. However, no one imagines that it will be his last day. While waiting for the authorization of the high priest in a quiet office of the church, Gordon begins to face disturbing supernatural manifestations. A soft voice calls him by his name.
Realizes that the demon that haunts Jack's house has followed him to the church. In panic, he tries to react, but the entity is too powerful. The crucifix he holds suddenly catches fire. Under the influence of the demon, Gordon becomes hypnotized and is taken to his own life. The news of his tragic death spreads quickly. Ed and Lorraine, who knew him well, appear at the funeral and are deeply shaken. When the ceremony ends and everyone starts to leave, Judy approaches Gordon's coffin. For reasons she can't explain, she feels compelled to touch him. The moment she does, she has a vision. When she returns home, Lorraine tries to calm down by doing routine tasks. While she washes the dishes in the kitchen, the drain suddenly clogs. When she tries to fix it, she feels a strong premonition that something terrible is about to happen to her daughter. At that exact moment, Tony arrives and informs that Judy is at Jack's house. Without hesitation, Lorraine calls Ed and runs there. When they arrive in the neighborhood, they're astonished to see a large crowd of curious people and reporters gathered in front of Jack's residence. Worried, Lorraine and Ed enter quickly, fearing that something has happened to Judy. To their relief, Judy is safe. She went there on purpose to investigate the death of Father Gordon after receiving a vision during the funeral. Judy believes that his death was not an accident, but the consequence of an attack by the evil entity that haunts the house. She begs her parents to help the Smurl family, convinced that only Ed and Lorraine have the strength to face such a powerful presence. Although Ed initially resists due to his fragile condition, they end up agreeing to help. Before starting the exorcism, Ed asks Jack and Janet to explain how the haunt began. While they tell the story, the atmosphere of the room changes. The air gets heavy and cold. Lorraine notices a dark presence, invisible to others. In that tense moment, Judy apologizes to her mother for acting alone and causing concern. Before Lorraine can respond, a noise echoes from the upper floor. Feeling the danger, Lorraine asks Judy to stay on the ground while she investigates. On the upper floor, she notices a dark figure quickly crossing the corridor. Lorraine then reveals to Ed that the house used to be part of agricultural land belonging to a man who murdered his wife with an axe after slandering her for treason. He also killed his in-laws before taking his own life. Even so, Lorraine explains that something much more sinister is in action. Such a powerful entity that now controls the spirits of those victims, using them to terrorize Jack's family.
Meanwhile, inside the house, Judy hears what appears to be her mother's voice calling her from the upper floor. Not realizing that it is a trick of the evil entity trying to attract her, she follows the sound. Upon reaching the basement, Judy is shocked to find the old mirror, previously destroyed, now perfectly intact. A dark and intense energy emanates from it. In the midst of fear, she hears the voice of a child calling her name. Scared, she goes down, but going to the children's room, she comes across something terrifying. There is a large and terrifying version of Annabelle in front of her, who, in a macabre way, begins to chase her. Hearing Judy's screams, Ed and Lorraine run to the upper floor and find her lying on the floor, trembling with fear. Judy reports that she saw the old mirror in the basement. When Ed and Lorraine go up, they are stunned to see the cursed mirror inside the Smurl family house. Shocked, they explain everything to Jack and Janet. Ed declares that all paranormal events that haunt the house originate from that mirror, an object that carries immense evil power. They had faced that same mirror 22 years earlier, but after the store went bankrupt and all the artifacts were auctioned off, the object passed through several owners. After the explanation, Ed and Lorraine decide to take him to the special containment room, ensuring that he never hurts anyone again. However, the moment they prepare to raise him, the mirror suddenly falls, almost making another victim. In the midst of the confusion, Lorraine realizes that Judy has disappeared. When she finds her, she is horrified to see her daughter possessed. Judy remains motionless for a moment. The same dark spirit that attacked her before birth has now returned, stronger than ever. Under possession, Judy leaves Lorraine unconscious and locks her in the basement. Then the evil entity disturbs the rest of the family, causing even more fear in them. Ed, when he witnesses the terrifying scene, desperately tries to save his daughter, but the effort causes a heart attack. Meanwhile, Lorraine regains consciousness and struggles to get out of the basement, only to be blocked by a man with a slow body holding an axe, the avenging spirit of the killer who lived there. At the moment he prepares to attack, Tony appears and saves Lorraine in time. On the upper floor, Ed miraculously survives the heart attack. He immediately orders Jack to withdraw the family from the house, now enveloped in dark energy. Shortly after, Lorraine and Tony run to help Ed rescue Judy, only to find her hanging by a rope. Horrified, they quickly cut the rope and ask them to lift it. Judy doesn't breathe, and the panic dominates the environment while they perform thoracic compressions and mouth-to-mouth breathing. The relief arises when Judy finally breathes, hence her eyes. However, the rest lasts short. The cursed mirror begins to rotate violently, indicating that the entity inside it remains alive and stronger. The force released throws Tony around the room, holding him under the object. Determined to save him, Ed begins the prayer of exorcism, but fails to complete it. The attacks intensify. At this critical moment, Lorraine understands that the only way to defeat evil is to face it directly. Gathering courage, Ed, Lorraine, and Judy touch the mirror together and pray aloud. An explosion of intense light invades the room, and the dark energy contained in the mirror is finally destroyed. Ed, Lorraine, Judy, Tony, and the Smurl family survive. The Smurls continue to live in the house for more than 3 years, although the trauma never completely disappears. The cursed mirror is kept in Ed and Lorraine's museum, locked to prevent it from causing damage again. Judy and Tony end up getting married and building a happy life, while Lorraine has the vision of a peaceful future surrounded by grandchildren. In the final moments, Ed and Lorraine record their experiences in a book and share their knowledge of the supernatural at a university, hoping that future generations will continue the mission.
They continue to help other people, although now only by phone. The final note reveals that Ed and Lorraine have been married for more than 6 decades. At 74 years old, Ed had a serious stroke, and Lorraine took care of him until his death 5 years later. She never got married again and died of natural death at 92 years old. This is the end of their journey.